Allegiance. Okay. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So yeah, you'll get some new neighbors out of the deal.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
They'll be good ones, I think.
This, of course, is the Carbon Dioxide Transit and Storage Advisory Committee, which is meeting. Let me remind you that, again, we are volunteers and that we are going to do the best that we can with our input from our citizens and also from residents of Lincoln County to propose some type of an ordinance that not only protects landowners, but also comes up with a solution, maybe short-term and also possibly long-term, that meets the needs of those that want to see some type of carbon pipeline storage facility in the future. So with that in mind, we have quite a difficult task ahead of us. We'll get started. And I guess the first thing that I'd like to do is have a motion to approve our agenda for today.
So moved.
I have a motion by Mr. Ahrens. Second by Mark. Is there any input from the audience? That being said, Kristen, will you call the roll, please?
Commissioner Ahrens?
Yes.
David Anderson?
Aye.
Mark Nordze?
Yes.
Anthony Ventura?
Yes.
Eric Scott?
Yes.
Marlene Sweeter?
Yes.
Commissioner Gibbon?
Yes, thank you. Also, taking a look at our agenda then for today, as you can see, the item number one, which is the discussion of a timeline, for reviewing the committee and to review the following proposed pipeline ordinance submitted to the county. Notice we have four of them which are listed there today: February 21st, June 20th, October 6th, and October 10th. And I guess I'd like some input from this committee. Do we want to go ahead and deal with these in that particular order, one at a time as a large group? Or would we prefer to particularly look at these and assign them to subcommittees? I know that there's advantages both ways. Number one, if we look at them as an entire group, we're all maybe more familiar with what each one of these says. On the other hand, if we break them down into committees of four and have each one present it to the rest of us, it might save us some time. But whatever we do, we want to do what's best for our county. And so I would like some input from committee members on what process you'd like to take.
Commissioner Gibbons,
Yes.
I kind of took all four ordinances that are out there and a fifth one that's being worked on, took the county letters and township letters, combined it into like a super ordinance that I passed out today. I would like that to be considered as maybe a model, and then work our way through the numbers and then work our way down the list. Might be simpler in form.
I think that since we approved the consent agenda, I think that would be something that we would probably put on the agenda then for next week. And I have no problem with that, that also could be considered.
Mr. Chairman, I want to
Yes.
propose the following for discussion. Before the committee just dives into the food fight, the sausage making of trying to legislate an ordinance, I think one of the things that we are mandated to do by the county commission is we're supposed to have a discussion and consideration of what other jurisdictions' setbacks are. And so before we just jump in and start duking it out and having discussions back and forth about what setbacks are, I think it would be helpful, not only to this committee, but to the public in general, is to understand what the setbacks are in other jurisdictions, particularly those who actually have CO2 pipelines. Here in South Dakota, there is no operating CO2 pipeline. It's just everybody kind of threw their thoughts out there and put it on paper. What I would like to hear from is, for example, why are the setbacks there's 5,300 miles of CO2 pipeline in America. None of that is in South Dakota. What I would like to hear is from those jurisdictions that have that 5,300 miles, for example, Texas. I'd like to hear from some regulators in Texas and as to why they have the setbacks, whether they have setbacks or not. I'd like to hear from Wyoming. For example, the Wyoming Utilities Board. They recently came up with a 500-foot setback. Oklahoma. So there's a number of jurisdictions that have 50 years of experience that I think we could learn a lot from before we just jump in and take a position and take sides. And I think that would be helpful to hear from those people and to invite them to testify to this committee if they're willing to do so. Additionally, I have heard that the former head of PHMSA is willing to provide testimony to us. I'd like to hear from the former national director of PHMSA to come in and talk to us as well. So what I'm proposing, Mr. Chairman, is we educate ourselves up on all these different issues before we actually attack the ordinances.
I think I want to disagree with a lot of that. This is South Dakota. If you want to manage in Texas or govern in Texas, move to Texas. The other thing is there's a lot of people on this board, including planning and zoning members, that have gotten up to speed. And so I think a lot of the data is here, and a lot of the data from when these guys made their decisions to now has changed quite a bit. And so I think the people deserve what's here, the plume modeling that's out, things like that, that are really resources we can go off of. And I think we talk to our state counties that have passed ordinances and ask them why they made their changes, Moody and everything else. And I think that should be our breaking point, not some Texas company or Texas county. And if he's an old PHMSA manager, he's not the new one, and maybe there's a new direction, and I think that's an outdated system. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Commissioner Aaron's, and thank you, Tony. Any other input?
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, Dave?
I guess I'm going to be on the side of Tony because I'm not that well educated on all these subjects. I've been trying to read, I've read through all 4 proposals that were provided to us last
Yes.
week. And the more I read, the more questions I have. And, you know, I think we're somewhat reinventing the wheel. Pipeline is a pipeline. I don't care if it's in Texas, Oklahoma, or South Dakota. A pipe is a pipe. CO2 is CO2. So I think there are things we can glean from somebody that's already been down this path rather than trying to reinvent the wheel. So I would appreciate some more education on the subject.
Are you endorsing having visitors, or I shouldn't say visitors, but those that might be experts on it to come in person or via phone, or?
I'd be very surprised if they're willing to travel here, especially this time of year, but phone, internet, I mean, that's what that system's for.
Okay, any other?
And if I may just add, I understand the time constraints we have, so we need to do it soon and probably no more than 2 meetings of that. If they can be condensed into one and get them lined up. You know, I don't want 14 of them, but if we could get 3 or 4, maybe.
Okay,
I also think that we need to bring in commissioners like Spink, places like that, and have them discuss why their changes are made. I think that's very imperative. That's local governance, and we need to understand their reasoning.
I guess, go ahead. I'll open this up to.
Mr. Chair.
To Carla, go ahead.
I actually had made a few notes just myself, and actually what I had wrote down is, I mean, we aren't Texas. Not that we couldn't glean some things from Texas and Oklahoma and you know, whatever, but obviously we have a whole different landscape than what they deal with there, more ranch land, you know, those kinds of things. We're here, we're cropland primarily, and a lot of these counties in South Dakota have fleshed out these same issues that already have passed ordinances. I really think we would benefit, you know, from getting McPherson and Brown and Spink and even Minnehaha County. I've been to some of those meetings as well,
And also, all of the testimony that was given at the PUC could really be beneficial for more information and some of the experts that were testified there as well. So that's my 2 cents. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair?
Yes, Mark?
I would agree with having more local input. The 5 counties that have passed an ordinance, I think would be very relevant to us. Having the PUC come and come and speak, I think would also be helpful. They've listened to all this. They could maybe narrow it down for us versus trying to go to this global approach and have counties from all over the U.S. come and talk to us. I think the circumstances are so different in Texas or Oklahoma than they are in South Dakota, that why reinvent the wheel, so to speak? We've got at least 5 counties that have passed ordinances that have had it vetted through their legal systems or their legal departments. We could probably use that. I would really recommend that we have Tony post those to the portal so that we don't have to go out and search those ordinances out. We can see them quickly and easily. I've read through the McPherson County one. It's an incredible ordinance. It's got all kinds of great stuff in it. We may or may not want to use, but it's very worthy of consideration, and it's done. And I think part of what I've heard as I've listened to this is we need consistency. As a pipeline company wants to start to do business, that they have the set of rules that are fairly similar as they cross county to county to county. We don't have a postage stamp approach. So I would personally look very hard at like what Minnehaha County did. I mean, it's just not because they're bigger or north of us, it's just because they're done. And trying to do that balance of, for the ethanol producers, the companies that are building the pipeline, and our residents who we want to keep safe. So that would be my thoughts, is not go global or US wide, stick to our local areas, use what they have learned, and keep this thing moving expeditiously, which long way is taking Tony's composite ordinance might be a way to start and work our way through that, versus trying to reinvent the wheel with a clean sheet of paper. I think it's always easier to edit than it is to come up with something brand new. Thank you.
I think since the companies challenged preemption and the PUC was very clear, and Minnehaha and Moody, we'll just say Minnehaha, there's another one. But the preemption discussion was discussed and answered at the PUC. I think it's very important and imperative that we bring our neighbor counties into this discussion.
I guess I'll throw this out. Would there be a possibility of perhaps next meeting, we limit it to 3, that we have tried to get someone, Steve, from outside of the state of South Dakota, somebody from our own South Dakota PUC, and then also one from a current county that already has passed a resolution? Would it be possible to get a representative from them, maybe either willing to come here or via phone? I'll throw that out as a possibility. Could the committee agree to something like that?
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, Eric.
So, yeah, I guess I'll circle back to what you were asking. Just my thoughts as I'm sitting here listening, and trying to make sense of what would be the most orderly way to do this. And when we look at I guess basically the 4 ordinances that are up there, and there's probably maybe another one dangling around. Currently, I don't think it's been explained to this board, what are the main components of it? And I've sat through 2 of them, right? So I know what the main components are, and I'm not sure if you guys have on the county commission level, but I think if we just I think all those ordinances that we have and that Tony's condensed, they all basically have the same sections or bullet points, right? And setbacks from certain things. And so instead of maybe breaking apart every ordinance, why don't we take the parts out of the ordinance and say, okay, we got setbacks from residents, we got setbacks from municipalities, we got setbacks from blah, blah, blah. And then maybe staff could explain to us, what's the difference, you know, in the 4 or 5 ordinances, what are the glaring differences on setbacks, from a residence? And I think Mr. Brown would easily be able to explain that to us. And then that's where our discussion points could start, right? And we could just take them right down the list and, make decisions on those, I guess those setbacks that are already out there in these ordinances. And then at the end, if we need to add something, we can sure do that if we think it's necessary. I don't know personally, I mean, I don't know how many outside people we need to come in here and tell us how to write our ordinance. We've done that, kinda. I mean, we've passed 2 ordinances at planning commission and sent them to the county commission, and those were passed, based on a lot of outside testimony. And so I think we've done that. I think we started with it. I think staff understands it pretty well, and maybe that's where we start. And then if we can't get questions answered from Toby, then we go looking outside. But to just, I think we're gonna spend a lot of time running a lot of circles, and we're gonna end up in the same place. We've got a lot of things to start with. Why don't we start with what we got? And then I guess if we have questions, we'll go out and find the people to come answer them, I guess would be my opinion. So what I'd like to see these things broke down. And let's just start with instead of the ordinances, let's start with the setbacks from the different types of things it needs to be set back from.
Mr.
I guess that would
Chairman,
be mine.
Yes.
I've got a question for the staff. Do any of you have experience with a CO2 pipeline? I think the answer is no. They don't have any experience with a CO2 pipeline. And that's not their fault, and that's not a derogatory thing. I think what it is it's a point that we should lean on and educate ourselves using those who do have real-world experience with CO2 pipelines. The chemical properties of CO2 are probably the same in Texas as they are in South Dakota. I don't think they change at the state border. And so I would like to hear, Mr. Chairman, so I'd endorse your plan of 1, 1, and 1, of actually hearing from those experts who have real-world experience regulating CO2 pipelines, as opposed to people who just have theoretical experience, which is the other counties around us. Now, that doesn't mean I don't respect them and their decisions, and that we can glean something from them. But I do endorse the chairman's proposal that we hear from people from the outside, and we don't pretend we're anti-science, and we don't close ourselves off at the state borders. I mean, there's a lot of knowledge that we can gain from outside state borders and from people who have real-world experience regulating these things. So that's why, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to hear from those kind of people.
Thank you. Any other comments from us on the committee?
Can we vote on that?
Pardon?
Can we vote on that?
Can we vote on, I don't know if it's is it necessary, Steve, to vote on this particular measure? Or can you and I get together and possibly see about the 3 areas of, one from the PUC, one from an existing county, and another one from an outside state?
I think it needed to be on an agenda item.
I'm sorry,
It would need
Steve.
to be an agenda item that you vote on, so if you put it on next
You're
week.
gonna need to make a main
But there's
motion.
nothing
That's in
wrong
a sec.
with
You'll have to make
reaching
a
out
motion.
and checking the
Okay.
availability of
Or somebody's gonna have
people
Okay.
interested.
All right. I guess with that being said, your question, Mr. Ventura, was what again?
I just think that if we're gonna bring in one side, we need to make sure that we bring in another expert from the other. We need to have both sides of testimony, not just somebody who works for a company or builds pipelines for a living. I mean, there is an interest in building those pipelines, and I'm for petroleum, I'm for all that stuff, but when it comes to CO2, that's a different monster, and you have to address it that way. And so I think if you bring in one expert for a pipeline, we need to have somebody to talk about the problems with the pipeline and be able to address those situations that way. It's got to be a fair balance or not at all.
Okay.
Thank you.
Any other comments?
Mr. Chair, I would add to your list of 3 presenters, to add Toby to the list, get that staff perspective. I think we heard that, the staff has done a lot of work on this, so maybe they can help bring us up to speed very rapidly versus trying to learn from square one. So I support what everybody said, the three, but maybe add a staff presenter as well, just to give us that overview
Okay.
and what landmines they've already encountered and save us from those.
Okay. All right, so basically you're saying one from the PUC, one from outside, one from a county that has an existing ordinance, and then from our local planning and zoning director, Toby Brown. Okay, well, I guess with that being said, can I entertain a motion?
So moved.
Motion by Mark, second by Dave. Mr. Anderson, is, with that being said, any discussion from the audience?
I can't do that while we have.
Scott Montgomery, Fairview, South Dakota.
Point of order.
Okay.
We've got a motion and a second on the table. We can't have public come up after that. I mean, we can discuss amongst
Yeah,
ourselves.
we do. That's the rules of the
That's the
county
way it works.
commission.
Yeah, we
That
we
is
changed
how it
our rules to the
works.
county commission. Yeah,
That's the county's public comment policy.
Yeah, well, it should have happened. Yeah, I don't think that's right, but.
I would have got up
I guess
and
we'll do it that way.
commented before the motion was made, gladly, but that wasn't offered.
I guess I'm under the understanding that we continue doing the rules that we do with our county, so.
I was under the understanding that last meeting, we made it clear that we were
Robert's
gonna follow Robert's rules, not your amended county procedures. And so in Robert's rules, once there's a main motion and it's seconded, then the floor is closed to public comment and we can have discussion amongst ourselves. But, and I don't have a problem with you talking, but we gotta get that set. How are we gonna do that, I guess?
Well, you want to withdraw the motion and allow public comment, and then we can go on with the
Well,
motion.
Robert's Rules of Order don't envision public comment. They envision comment from the members. So when you say the comment period is closed, that's correct from the members up here. This is just public comment. And I mean, it's county law. That's our policy. We voted on that already. People get to comment on each particular agenda item. Because we follow Robert's Rules of Orders for the commission too.
Yeah.
And we've melded the two together. That allows the public to
But
come
that's
up
just,
here.
it's exactly what you just said. You melded your own thing together, and I guess we didn't make that definition at last meeting, that we were gonna use your melded version, and.
I don't think Robert's Rules of Order prevent him from coming up to speak.
Well, I guess I disagree, but Mr. Chairman, you do what you want.
Yes,
on
I
this.
guess I would like public input, and I guess with that, I'm going to let you go ahead and speak for 3 minutes.
Okay, thank you. Scott Montgomery, Fairview, South Dakota. A lot of these ordinances were made around the state were made before the declining of the application of Navigator. Navigator's plume study showed a setback of 1,855 feet on a 6-inch pipeline. We're talking a 24-inch pipeline here, which is 16 times more volume than a 6-inch pipeline. So I think anything less than 1,855 feet would be absolute insanity. I mean, the experts we're talking about said it's 1,855 feet on a 6-inch. So we've already heard from the experts. We talk about people that have had experience with the pipeline. Why don't we invite some people from Satartia, Mississippi up here? Those people were affected with the largest leak in history of CO2. They were outside of the setbacks that the experts said, and there was over 200 people affected by that. So it's plain and clear the experts don't know. I gave you people some documents, and one of them is about the federal government asking for a study on what safe setbacks are on CO2 pipelines, because they have no regulations. In 2022, they asked for, they're going to award $4 million for studying this, with the results being 24 to 36 months after the award of these bids, which was the last quarter of 2022. So the soonest we're going to get these is the last quarter of 2024, and possibly as late as 2025. So the federal government readily admits they don't know what is safe for CO2 pipelines. I think until we know what is safe, we should not allow those in Lincoln County. That's what I got. Thank you.
Any other public comments?
Good morning, Sarah Stever, Lennox, South Dakota. I was just going to add to that comment and suggest that perhaps Denbury be one of our experts. They're a pipeline company that's built a pipeline. And then after it ruptured, declared bankruptcy, and then a couple months later came up again as a different name, but same pipeline company, so I'm sure their experts are still available. Thank you.
Any other? Okay. Go ahead if you,
It's just short to add on. Linda Montgomery from Fairview, South Dakota. I understand asking these companies in different states that have these pipelines, but I also think that we also need to look at the states who refused to let these pipelines come in and what their reasons are and what their setbacks are. I encourage that we continue to be allowed to have public comment. I would like to see it done before any vote. I agree with that. That's why we're here. That's why all of us are here, to be a part of, because this affects us as well as you. And it's more than just what's going to benefit a few, and also how, all I would say, I really want us to be able to speak before any vote is taken or before, after you guys get done, kind of like what you were talking about. Thank you.
Yeah.
all right, thank you.
Yeah, so I'll just say, I'm not against public comment. I'm 100% for it. I just think it needs to be in the right order. That's all I'm saying.
Yes. And our public comment at the end is for non-agenda items, so. Well, we do have a motion, and, oh, okay.
Rick Moran, Bruce, South Dakota. I am the Lincoln Township Supervisor, and I'm just, if I understand right, this is gonna be a county-wide ordinance, correct?
Yes.
If
Yes.
this is passed, because, quite honestly, the townships, I was part of the livestock when they had the CAFOs back in '97. And there wasn't any, and then there had some townships that were going to, put their own ordinances and everything else, and I would really appreciate it if this was just a one ordinance, so the township, it doesn't fall in the townships, because quite honestly, we don't have the money to fight this or deal with it, so I guess that's all I wanted to say, so thank you.
Thank you. All right, with that, we do have a motion and a second. I guess, do you want to repeat the motion so everyone on the committee knows what they're voting for?
I'm not sure what the motion was for, to be
Who
honest.
who made the motion to?
It's for Commissioner Gibbons' proposal to do 1, 1, and 1,
And including,
and what Mark added.
yes, which would be Mr. Brown,
So
Toby.
1,
Yes.
1, 1, and 1.
Are we talking about, can we comment on this?
Pardon?
Yeah.
I think we need to be careful because maybe the PUC, since this is a hearing and maybe someone is going to reapply, that they may not be able to discuss this matter. And so that might be something that's not even on the table. Have
I guess
thought
we
of that
won't
as a
know unless
board?
we ask, right, Steve? So I think we're okay with the original motion, correct, which was,
Yeah, I mean, Mr. Chairman, I agree with Mr. Ventura's sentiment that possibly the PUC won't be able to comment, but if they do have somebody up there that is able to, within the bounds of whatever their rules are, we should at least find out. We shouldn't
Correct.
just stick our head in the sand and say, no, we're not going to. We should at least find out.
Yeah, and ultimately, this should be an agenda item since this wasn't noticed. So
Steve, do you want to come up here to the microphone so the public can hear? It's important.
So the nature of this item, it should be a posted agenda item, so we should push this vote off until next week.
Yes,
And
correct.
then we can outline specifically what it is. We can check availability of those that potentially we would be wanting to speak, gives them the time. but this should probably be pushed off till the following week.
And at that time, I agree with you, and I think at that time you take public comment
Yep.
ahead of the main motion, if there is one.
Whatever the protocol you set.
Yeah.
Ultimately, this should be.
I think that's how it, should go as well.
So you were saying.
Because
we
it's
should-
not within the scope of this current agenda. This was
Okay.
more
So-
for the timeline of reviewing the
Yeah.
4 ordinances that are there.
I agree.
You would like the motion withdrawn, you're saying, and put
Yes.
till next week?
To be, a listed agenda item.
Would you be willing to withdraw your motion, or the second and the motion?
Yeah, I'll withdraw and then, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and then we'll put it on the agenda for next week.
Okay, that's fine. Very good. With that being said, any other comments by the committee?
So I think basically what we started with and what we ended with are different things, but what we started with was agenda item number 1, and your question to us was if we felt like we should attack them that way. And I guess, I don't feel like we should. I think that now that we've decided some other things, so, but we probably need to take care of agenda item number 1. And whether we want to probably postpone that, versus just making a motion and denying it, but that's what we probably need to take care of currently.
Well, I'm
Or
looking at
amend
it-
it, or do we want to wait until we talk to these folks or deal with that before we deal with this, I think is probably the way to do it.
Number one, we don't know about the availability, obviously, of these people either, but we'll try. But at the same time, for the purpose of time and so forth, it would be nice if we could go ahead and roll up our sleeves and do some of this today.
Yeah.
I think one
So what
thing
I-
is since we had 50 citizens apply on an ordinance that has not been brought through planning and zoning yet, should have been, but it hasn't, I believe that we should bring them in for testimony also. I think what they have to say in their education will be relevant to this conversation.
I think what, Mr. Chairman, I think
Go
what you
ahead.
were just asking is, and I think this is what agenda item number 1 does, is it gives us a point in time where we actually start having this discussion. And what do we want to start discussing? I think is what you're asking on, is what we're asking on that agenda. Do we want to take it by ordinance, or do we want to take it by topic? I guess those are the two things that, the way I look at it is how we could break it down.
Well, and it's like Representative Anderson was saying, do we need 1 meeting or do we need possibly 2 to be able to hear from these folks or do this information search? And then is that the point in time where we start to have that discussion, right?
Correct.
So I
So we
think
wanna
that's what
do
we're trying
that
to
first?
figure, any discussion about a timeline necessarily requires us to talk about what goes into that and who or what are we gonna consult before we have that discussion. So I'm okay with having one meeting, maybe 2 before you talk about it, or maybe halfway through the second one, you start to talk about it. That's fine with me. In terms of a projected timeline.
I think there needs to be a sense of urgency on this. I know that there's 1 or 2 already, but there could be multiple more projects coming into this area. And so the longer we wait, the longer the citizens aren't represented by fair ordinance. And so I think we need to be very advantageous to this. I also think that if we want to table all these, add that super ordinance to it, go through each one of them line by line and consider numbers and just start, I think the main thing is you got to come by numbers. What is a fair setback? What is the distance? What else that needs to be included? And then what things do maybe we pass on to planning and zoning for further discussion and move on? I think we're kind of dragging our heels here.
Again, this is good discussion because we need to make sure that we're all on the same page to some degree here. So I guess for the, since the motion and second have been withdrawn, for the purposes of time and also for knowledge of this subject area, are there some areas today that you'd like to discuss under item number 1?
Yeah, I guess I'm a bit confused because at one point here, we're saying, well, maybe we need to have the discussion with about the experts or whoever. And we need to wait for that before we have this discussion. But then it also seems like we're being asked, like, let's start the discussion now. And I guess I'm cool with whatever. I mean, I've been through a lot of this. So I'm ready to have that discussion today. I don't know if everybody else feels comfortable. But yeah, if we want to start cracking it open, let's.
Do you want to start talking
do
about
it.
setbacks and things like that?
Well,
I'd be fine with that.
That's what the chairman's asking. I mean,
Yeah, I'm
do
good
we
with
want to, and I guess if we want to do that, what I would ask is I'd ask Toby to come up and, I mean, if we want to start with the first ordinance, come up and explain some things, and
As
what
of-
some differences are.
You mean of February 21st?
Yeah.
Starting with the first ordinance?
Sure.
Okay, and your request is?
Well, if that's what everybody wants to do, if they want to start having that discussion before we have the people next week, if we're gonna do that, I think that's where we start. We have to take, in my opinion, we gotta take care of agenda item number one. We either gotta postpone it, or we gotta dive into it and start talking about it, one or the other. And so if we're gonna postpone it, we need a motion to postpone, definitely, or indefinitely, I guess. And, otherwise, I think, Chairman, we just gotta start talking about it.
Yeah. And I
If
think
you
we
can't
did-
get that motion
We did
to
approve the consent agenda, which we'll go ahead, and I think we might as well start diving into item number one, which is February 21st, and particularly, I know, Toby, I don't know if you prepared for that, but is there any comments? Can we start with you on the February 21st ordinance?
I'll humbly say I wasn't prepared, but, I guess, so the agenda item was really, these are the four ordinances that have been submitted to the county. The first three have been submitted by private citizens, fees have been paid. Really, there's been no real action on any of them yet. As Tony mentioned, we didn't schedule one for the October 6th submittal yet, pending, the Board of Commissioners giving direction to you guys to review these ordinances and then give some direction back to them on it. So that's correct, we haven't scheduled the public hearing for that one yet. I guess what I would kick off is that all of these ordinances have been submitted by your members. So Mr. Ventura submitted both the February 21st and the June 20th one. And then Carl Lems and some citizens submitted the October 6th, and October 10th was a kind of a hybrid drafted by Commissioner Aaron's. So I guess in two parts to this is what I would probably recommend is that maybe you schedule next week to look at the first two that were submitted by Mr. Ventura. I can give you the staff reports on those that we prepared for the planning commission. That would give you something in advance to look at. And then Mr. Ventura as well could probably do some presentation on kind of his thoughts of those two ordinances as well too. What I would say on both of those ordinances, staff, and that's very evident in the staff reports, staff didn't assist with kind of making any judgments or analysis of those ordinances, other than there was some form things that we did work with the applicant on. What I would also say too is that that first ordinance was actually submitted December 19th. And then there was some publication error that we drug it out till the February 21st meeting. But essentially this process started back on December 19th of last year with at least an ordinance review by planning and zoning staff. So I guess I don't want to kick the can down the road. I certainly defer to you guys, but I would think it'd be better use of the time to put the first two on the agenda next week. I give you the staff reports in your packets. You're able to look at that, and then Mr. Ventura as well could probably present some of his analysis to it too. Two very different ordinances, I'll say. The second ordinance, the February 21st ordinance, I did have discussions with Mr. Ventura, but I don't know if there was essentially a model for that particular ordinance. The June 20th ordinance, that was what I would say is a Minnehaha County-based model ordinance, as close as what you would say it is, I guess, if I'm correct there. And if I'm incorrect, Mr. Ventura, you can certainly correct me on that, but I think the February 21st ordinance was, if I'm correct on that, was maybe based on more of a legal ordinance that was maybe through Nebraska. I don't recall completely on that one, but we did have some discussions on that, so.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Yep.
Mr. Brown, just so everybody's got something to chew on a little bit, can you do you remember, or are you prepared, give us just a few differences on maybe setback feet and some things like that between the two?
Yeah, I don't.
You're
I'm
not, yeah.
Yeah, I'm not ready
Okay.
for that right now, but yeah, but essentially what I would say is
What would
that.
you, let me ask you this, though.
Yep.
Of all the ordinances, what do you feel like are kind of the four big sectors, maybe, or five, where we would have to, where we would want to have, or where the ordinance has setbacks from, i.e., like residents, municipalities, so on and so forth?
So I'll answer that question the way we'd, if we were requested by the Board of Commissioners to draft an ordinance, we always start with the first thing, which is your definitions. That's the most important part of any ordinance is how are we defining? And if you look at all the ordinances and the McPherson, the Brown County ordinances, the Moody, the Minnehaha County ordinances, they all have different definitions for what a carbon dioxide pipeline is. And I think that's problematic.
Yeah.
I think you have to come up with what is the standard definition for what a carbon dioxide pipeline is. Some jurisdictions, including some of these ordinances, looked at hazardous pipelines, which, if you recall from the Planning Commission public hearing, staff concerned with hazardous pipeline regulations, that we already have hazardous pipelines in the county, and those would become non-conforming uses. I'm not saying that's good or bad, I'm just educating you that that is problematic.
Could potentially be a
Yep.
bigger problem, correct?
Yep. So in general, though, I would say that then you look at the definitions first, because that's the most critical part of any ordinance. The second part about it's the land use. So what zoning districts is this going to be allowed in? So in Lincoln County, predominant is agricultural A1 zoning district is our predominant district. Is it in that district? Is it not in that district? What districts is it in? And then I think within the districts then, in Lincoln County and all of our zoning districts, we have permissive uses which are by right. So typically, there's no standards with those. And then we have permitted special uses, which is what I'll call a hybrid in between a permissive use and a conditional use. And then we have conditional uses, which in Lincoln County, conditional uses require a public hearing. They require action by the Planning Commission and then can be appealed by, to the Board of Commissioners. So you need to establish what zoning districts, and then number two is what uses within those zoning districts would it be applicable to. And then I think within that, then you're getting to the main thing that everybody's concerned about, what's the setback?
Right.
And so, but to me, that's like the third, fourth step down the road after you get through that kind of framework put together. And I think those are easy kind of things that you can check off, those different items there. The hard part's going to be the setbacks. It's going to be the specific regulations that you're going to want under those under those uses or land uses, so, yeah.
And I kind of agree with Committee Member Anderson, who last week made reference to the fact that, we are making a recommendation, it's all to the Planning and Zoning and to the County Commission. This isn't the law, so to speak, but a recommendation. But I also agree with him when he says a pipeline is still a pipeline. I mean, is this that much different? I mean, maybe you'd like to elaborate on that. Committee Member Anderson.
So if you want a recommendation from staff, it would be you schedule next week to go over the first two ordinances. And then we can also work to see if we can get some attendance from those people. We can put that on the agenda that you can vote on that.
Yep.
But I think that would give staff, the applicant, some time to really put some more analysis together to answer the questions that you're going to want to have after this. And then beyond that, I think these four ordinances are important. Citizens of Lincoln County paid $350 for each of those applications. And I think that they should be acted on, either thumbs up, thumbs down, or give a recommendation. I could find the ordinances all over the country and all over the world for what this is, but this is ones that we've started with at this point, so.
Yeah.
Toby, what are the 2 or 3 ways that an ordinance comes in front of planning and zoning or the commission for consideration under our ordinance?
So under our ordinance, the Board of Commissioners has to direct staff to draft an ordinance that would then be remanded back to the Planning and Zoning Commission for a recommendation back to the Board of Commissioners. But under our ordinance, I can't propose a draft. It would have to be directed by the Board of Commissioners. So.
And then so what I'm getting at is and please correct me if I'm wrong, there's 2 ways to propose an amendment or a change or an ordinance in this county. The first is citizen initiative, pays a fee, works with your office. That entitles them to a hearing in front of planning and zoning, right?
Correct, correct.
That's how that works, so that's what.
That's how it's worked in the past. yes.
Correct.
Yep.
And that's what our ordinance allows.
Mhm.
Because some counties don't allow that, correct? I think Minnehaha County did away with that, just a year or two ago, maybe?
To my understanding, yes. Yeah.
So Lincoln County is unique in the sense that we actually allow an initiative. You know, you pay the fee, you get the initiative. But then the other way, of course, is one of the commissioners can put it in front of the county commission, and then we can remand it to P and Z for discussion. Is that the two ways that
Correct,
these ordinances come up?
correct. Yep.
Okay.
Now, that fourth one, is that still tabled at the county commission level? So it's not a live bill?
It was submitted to the county, yes, but it was
So
never
it's
acted
still
on.
tabled at the commission,
Correct,
so it hasn't been
yeah.
remanded, it hasn't been filed with the PUC, it hasn't gone through the processes of these other three who paid their $350, who bought their golden ticket to have a hearing?
Correct.
Is that what we're saying?
Correct, yep.
So do we need to consider the fourth at all?
That's up to the board committee, yep.
Well,
Okay.
I would take issue with that, Mr. Ventura. I mean.
Well, I think you could, but I
Can I
think.
finish?
Sure.
The elected members of the commission voted to consider it, but then they voted to table action on it. Okay, so I think it's important to establish what the facts are. Which is wrong. The commission does not need to vet its ordinances through the PUC. That,
Excuse me, planning and zoning.
okay?
It hasn't gone through planning and zoning like the first three, so the first two have gone through and run the process. The third one's in limbo. They paid their $350, so citizens deserve to have a hearing. And then you have the fourth one that just mysteriously, the companies could have come through and filed a $350 permit. The commissioner could have filed a $350 permit. Instead, it seems like we're kind of skirt the rules to, I guess, abuse the process. And that's my opinion, but I take stance to that.
Well, excuse me, the rules also allow us as elected commissioners to have that put on the agenda. That's our county ordinance.
And you're correct, but it's tabled. It's
So-
not a live bill. It's not going anywhere. It's sitting on a table.
That's correct, but that doesn't mean it's not worthy of considering.
Yeah, that's fine. I've taken your ordinance and written it into mine, so it's easy to discuss.
So, I mean, but here's the issue. It's not a violation or skirting the rules. You're allowed, as Toby said, citizens can bring one, commissioners can bring one.
Right, and you could bring one as a citizen. You chose to try to not do the process like every other citizen in Lincoln County, and I take offense to that.
Well, I think what we're doing here is we're saying, time out. Let's have a
Right,
committee like this discuss it.
but I think we can discuss that also.
I 100% agree with you. We
Perfectly,
should-
so let's move on.
We should discuss all of
All
that.
right. Go ahead, Mr. Chairman. And thanks for the discussion, guys. But I think while Mr. Brown's up here, let's keep it on point. And his recommendation, and I would tend to agree with it, is give him some time to break down the first two ordinances. And I guess it would be my opinion that the most previous one that was passed by or the most current one that was passed by planning and zoning would be B, correct? The June 20th?
Yes.
Which,
And I know, yeah,
which was technically denied by the Board of Commissioners.
correct. But it's the most current one that went through planning and zoning. And I think we should start with that one because I do know that the February 21st one was quite lengthy, and there was a lot of things in that we did strike out to get to the June 20th, and there was some verbiage in there that maybe wasn't right, and some things like that. So instead of reinventing the wheel and having that whole conversation again, maybe we start with the June 20th one. And then if we need to add from there, if Mr. Ventura feels there's things from the February ordinance that would be helpful to add to the June one, and that would give us a good starting point, and where we could go. And then you could explain to us, maybe if it was right or not right, what are the things that could be polished up in that June ordinance that would make it a little more, like you're talking about your definitions and so on and so forth. And then if that's on the agenda that we're gonna break apart that June ordinance, maybe we could handle it just like we do at a planning commission, where you give us a staff report and then we let public come up and make their comment at that time of what they think, what they like and what they don't like about that ordinance, what they think that we should add to it or take away, right? So would you be prepared or able to do that?
Yeah, next week, yep.
Okay, so with that, I guess, Mr. Chairman, if, unless you have more comment on it, I think, well, would everybody be okay if that's where we had a starting point?
I agree.
I think that's, Mrs. Sweeter, we haven't heard from you. Are any comments that you'd like to make at this time?
No, I agree. I agree with Commissioner Eric.
Okay? With the first two items, A and B, for next time?
Well, and we're gonna break down B, I think, it would be, that would be my recommendation, and I.
Mr. Anderson, you had a comment?
I guess I just want clarification based on something that Mr. Scott just said, or a minute or two ago. Has the commission acted on February 21 and June 30th, if I have those dates right? I thought you said that the commission's already turned down, or maybe it was Toby that said that, I'm sorry.
Toby, you were the one that,
June 20th.
correct, that you
Has
said
been
they,
denied by the county commission.
Correct.
Well, I believe.
And it was before the PUC hearing, and I think maybe I'm gonna answer your question, maybe not, but I think the reasoning, if you go back and watch, Commissioner Aaron's wasn't there, Commissioner Poppins had recused himself, Commissioner Schmidt and Gibbon voted yes, Commissioner Landine voted no, because she didn't feel like the county had that authority to do it. And then since what's happened is that the PUC has basically granted that authority. And so, in my opinion, it didn't fail because they didn't like something in the ordinance. It failed by one vote because Commissioner Landine didn't think that the county had the authority to do it.
Well, we passed, but we failed. And the reason why is because you need 3 commissioners to vote yes. So I want to be very clear on that.
Yeah,
So
that's
we
the other
passed, we
They just
actually
didn't have
got
a
something, but we didn't have enough to finish because we didn't have the percentage. We can still bring that to a public ballot, and that's on the table too.
okay, I think we're kind of getting off topic here a little bit, but I think we move forward here. I think that we more or less have decided, we'll start with B, correct? Next week, and then go to A, and I think that, that being said, am I correct on that, as committee?
Yeah.
Okay, then we'll go ahead for that for next week.
So I think what we should do is we should make a motion, basically to postpone agenda item number 1 to next week. And then, with that, when we get to next week, when we're approving the agenda, we're gonna take it that we're gonna,
Would you like to make that motion?
Yeah. So I'm gonna make the motion to postpone agenda item number 1 to next week, in which we'll discuss ordinance B.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion by Mr. Scott and a second by Commissioner Aaron's. Is there any?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
I'm a little concerned here. We only have a few meetings.
Correct.
Rather than pigeonhole ourselves in our own ability to discuss and debate the merits of one plan or one idea or another, we just need to say, we're going to deal with, this is a committee. It's
Correct.
not the commission, it's not the legislature, it's a committee. We need to put on the agenda that we're going to deal with the issues related to CO2 pipelines and storage in Lincoln County. And if you're concerned about that, show up at the meeting. If you're not, then don't show up. Otherwise, we're just tying our own hands. We need to be able to move into whatever form or level of discussion at any time. So for what that's worth, that would be my suggestion.
Okay, thank you. We do have a motion and a second on the right now, so I guess, is there any discussion? Any other discussion?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
substitute motion, do you get into those things?
Well, I guess we could.
Can. Or you can amend, yeah.
My substitute motion would be that we draft an agenda that leaves full leeway to the committee to deal with any and all discussion topics related to CO2.
Second.
Okay, We will now vote then. Any discussion on the
I
substitute
guess,
motion?
I don't have a problem with that, but I mean, where's the starting point? I guess that's the part I'm frustrated with. We've been here twice now, and just like you're saying, Mr. Anderson, is that we need to start having those discussions, but we've sat here twice now for 2 hours and we still haven't, we haven't talked about anything. And so I guess in your motion, in your substitute motion, that's pretty broad, pretty vague. I mean, can you at least give us a starting point?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
I'm happy with an agenda. Just put in that agenda some language to that effect that doesn't tie our hands. I mean, I think Mr. Brown and his staff should absolutely put an agenda. The members of the committee should submit ideas for agenda items to discuss specific things they want to discuss, but let's not tie our hands so that, oh, that's a good idea, but we can't talk about it until the week after next because we got to put it on an agenda and then we got to vote on it and then we got to talk about it. That's crazy.
Okay, all right.
So I agree with,
So do you want to withdraw your substitute motion then? To word it as you just said?
I'm just gonna make a comment. I agree with you, Mr. Anderson. But at the same time, the reason that we have that, and the reason that those orders and processes exist is so that the public does have plenty of time to come and comment on it. I mean, if we would have started this thing off, and made the assignments that we're gonna have these 3 or 4 people come talk, the only people that would have known about it are the people that are here. And so if we don't put those bullet point specific things on the agenda, then how are we supposed to know if you know, and I know what you're saying. If you're concerned about it, be here. Well, that isn't always so easy for everybody, you know? So maybe one person's super concerned about the setbacks to a municipality, they'll be here for that day. The next person's super concerned about the setbacks from a residence, they can be here that day, right? So I still think that we need to bullet point the agenda, in my opinion.
I think that makes sense, and I also think that since the 4 cities have weighed in on their opinions and the townships are starting to weigh in, that we need to include that data also into our findings. That's imperative, since you're talking about all the citizens of the county, not just a few.
Steve, can I ask you, have we had many go on the website and make comments or so on? Have we had general public?
Yeah, let me cover that real quick. So the website is live. Contributions have been received this past week and are continuing. We've been updating those. Part of that is a review to make sure there isn't any personal information, things that could expose somebody to identity theft, those sort of things. So we're looking at it from that point. So some of those things are taking a little bit of time because those items need to be redacted before they post them publicly. But in some of the information that's being posted has already been posted, you know, including the 4 ordinances that are there. I did want to take this opportunity to let anybody know that if they are not computer savvy or they don't have access to a computer, they can also mail it to the county, attention to the commission office, and we'll be able to post it for them as well. Or if they want to drop it off in person, they can drop it off at the auditor's window. But yes, also, I want to encourage the committee that if they have any ideas for agendas within the time frame for posting, if they can get that to us at least by the end of Thursday. I have not received any actual agenda items from any of these committee members regarding agendas for future agendas. So encourage, if you have ideas or if you want to approach these ordinances from specific parts or in their the order that they've been presented or as was discussed by Toby. Like I said, that's open, but we do need to kind of narrow down the focus for each meeting so that there's progress. But either way, looking for any of those items, and then it'll be discussed with the chair before it gets posted to the agenda. But feel free to reach out to me.
Thursday afternoon, correct?
Thursday afternoon is the deadline for any of the agendas, so as it will be.
So idea of a number of people that have responded or not?
I would, as far as uploads,
Yes,
probably upwards of about 30.
okay,
Mr. Chairman,
yes.
the reason I seconded Representative Anderson's motion is I like the idea of each member here that sits on this organization of being able to bring forth what they want to this committee. Okay? Now, I know that initially here, about 45 minutes ago, there was some boxing out going on. Well, we don't want this information to be heard, but we want this information to be heard. And I don't think public policy is well-developed when we box anybody out. So what I hope with Representative Anderson's motion is, and like we were talking about here just now, and like what we talked about at the last meeting, if any member here wants to put an agenda item on for discussion, they ought to be allowed to. I don't care if that information conflicts with my worldview or is totally sympathetic to my worldview or maybe a mix in between. I don't care. This ain't Washington, D.C., where we got to play this hardball politic crap. Here in South Dakota, everybody ought to be allowed to have their say, and you ought to be allowed to hear what people have to say. Shouldn't be sticking our heads in the sand and saying, well, let's only hear from Moody County, because all the experts on CO2 pipelines only live in Moody County. They don't. And so I think we ought to take a reasoned, sober approach to this. And I think if any member here wants to have something on the agenda and wants to have it presented, we should allow it.
Thank you. I appreciate those comments.
Chairman, I agree with Commissioner Aaron's and Mr. Anderson here, and I think that's what Mr. Rasmussen was just telling us. I think he was clarifying that if anybody wants to add any more agenda items, that we can sure do that, and it's got to be done by when, Thursday?
Sometime.
Yeah, Thursday at the end of the day.
Okay.
And then, like I said, I review it with the chair so
Yep.
that we determine, so we're not looking at like a 3-hour meeting. So
Right.
we look to balance those out, or if there's a theme, or if there's some aspect that needs to be pushed to a following week, just
Yep.
from a timeliness perspective, that discussion occurs with the chair before it's posted on Friday for the weekend.
Okay,
Yeah.
very good, thank you. So, Mr. Chairman, we still have two motions that we need to deal with.
Yes.
So I guess let's move, it would be my opinion, it's my request, that we move on and take care of those.
Okay, thank you.
Call the question on the substitute motion.
Yes. We'll vote on the substitute motion first. Do we know what that motion was again, Dave, or Kristen? Yeah.
So I have to discuss specific items related to the pipeline. Specifically.
Yes. That was your motion, right, Dave?
Well,
Let's make sure it's right.
it's been so long, I don't remember exactly what I said, but
Let's make sure.
basically, I don't want to tie the hands of the committee, so the motion is something along the lines of, and maybe this will be a new substitute, a new version, but in addition to the items posted on the agenda, leave an open slot for issues that come up during the meeting so we can fully discuss whatever's in front of us that day rather than having to postpone to a future date. Does that still meet with your second?
That's my second.
That's yours. Okay. Go ahead, Kristen, call the roll, please.
Commissioner
Oh,
Aaron.
excuse me, what? Oh, I guess I have to ask for for public input.
I'm Linda Montgomery from Fairview, South Dakota. I get what you're both saying, and I get the first motion. I think you need to do both. One is discuss B, the June 20th, and the second one would be a question for what else do we need to talk about that has come up? Because we still need to start somewhere. And I believe discussing June 21st is great, but then we also need, what you're talking about is another slot, number 2. What other issues do we need, while discussing June 20th, what other discussion topic needs to be brought forward? And that would be agenda number 2. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair,
That
that is exactly my intent, just better said.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, I guess, are there any other public comments? Okay, committee comments.
Yeah, I still, I mean, we're basically, I don't think what Mr. Anderson's asking for replaces what the original motion was. The original motion was just to take care of agenda item number 1. That's all I was trying to do. And so he's gonna, and then I think from what he's saying is we're The motion just got taken care of by Mr. Rasmussen, and he said any of that stuff we want to put on there, and then at the end of the meeting, if we just leave a time for public comment, I think it kind of takes care of it. So I guess my question is just to clarify this motion, is it to specifically just leave a time at the end of the meeting where we can have open comment amongst the board?
I think it's just an open slot for additional agenda items, correct, Steve? You were making mention to? Or-
But do you think, Steve, we can't just start firing stuff on the agenda the day of the meeting, can we?
No, because there needs to be notice, so for those that
Yeah.
want to have public comment or want to
Okay,
comment on that particular
Yeah.
item, they need to have notice.
the question was called, so I think we need to vote. So with that being said, Kristen, call for the substitute motion.
Commissioner Aaron's,
Yes.
David Anderson.
Aye.
Mark Nordzy,
Yes.
Anthony Ventura,
Yes.
Eric Scott,
No.
Marlene Sweeter,
Yes.
Commissioner Gibbon.
Yes. Motion carried. Thank you. All right. Now, the original motion, can I ask for that withdrawal, or has it been, pardon?
That dies.
That died. Okay, very good. All right.
So in our, but still, we haven't, I don't think we've taken care of agenda item number one.
I agree, and I
I
think,
mean, we gotta do something with that, you guys. You can't just sit here.
I think we post a
It's gotta
date
be
on when we
taken
want
care
to
of.
send, when we want to set basically a standard of maybe talking about setbacks. Let's set that 2 weeks from now and start getting that in motion. We're sitting idle and, I mean, it's kind of like running your car run with gas running and you're spending money doing nothing. I think we need to start developing a concept on how we're getting there, and right now we're not seeming to go anywhere.
Yeah, and I mean, the other option we have is we can take a motion to amend the agenda and just take number one off the agenda if you guys don't want to do something about it. But we gotta take care of it.
I guess, is there,
Tell me this, what's your proposal?
yeah, I guess I
I
don't
had a
know.
proposal, I had a motion that we postpone agenda item number one to next week, and we start with a staff report of item B. That was my original motion, and it got substituted out for something that didn't have anything to do with this, and that's why I voted no on it, because I didn't think the substitute motion took care of item number one.
Well, I think we have a clearer way forward after the substitute motion. We've got that locked in place. Do you want to make your motion again? Because I'll second it.
Yeah. Okay, I'm gonna move that we postpone agenda item number one to next week, and we lead with a staff explanation of item B, the June 20th ordinance.
Motion by Scott, is there a second?
Yes, second.
Any discussion?
I concur with that theory, but can we also include June 20th to be fully discussed that day?
Yeah, I think it will be. I
just
mean,
wanna make
once we
sure
get a
that's-
full
that's
staff
set.
report, and then after the staff report, then we'll have discussion.
Okay,
From the
thank you.
public and the committee, and then we can move from there.
Okay.
I'm just
Last,
trying to get a starting point.
okay, we have a motion and a second. Public input?
Sarah Stever, Lennox, South Dakota. I'm just curious what's going to happen with the October 6th ordinance. Can that be put on the agenda? That would be the one that hasn't been through planning and zoning.
I'm
It's in
assuming
limbo.
that will be put on in future weeks. But maybe I'm assuming incorrectly.
Well, the plan right now is to do the first two next week, and then ostensibly the second two the week after that.
Then we can put that on the agenda, the next two, because I do believe we should go through all of them currently, and get staff's analysis on it and public input on all the ordinances, and then from there, I think we can start to make some decisions. So yeah, I don't think that one's getting swept under the rug. We just, in the, because of time and Toby's got a lot going on, to have him prepare staff reports on all four in one day, I think would be too much. So that's why I've just limited it.
Yep. Okay.
Thank you.
Any other public input?
I'm gonna ask you to look at all four of them the same day. I mean, the staff reports have already been made, right? That's just printing them out and bringing them to you. Why would we postpone, let's get this thing going. I mean, we've spent how many hours here and gotten nothing done? Let's get this thing going. Let's put all 4 of them on here, stomp it in the ground and move on. Thank you.
Any others?
It's Linda Montgomery again. Your first motion, I think, it's broad. You know what you're gonna get? This. I think, when you make an outline or when you make an agenda, you do number 1, the agenda. Under that, you put A, B, C, D, setbacks, boundaries. You put agenda items under that, or you put, these are the topics. If no one has anything to discuss regarding A, you go to B, go to C. I really encourage you, as a group, to get organized, because this is important. And, the simple agenda can be your best friend. Thank you.
Thank you. Any committee members? Okay.
I just think we have one agenda item and it's taken us an hour to deal with that. So I mean, no offense, Mr. Montgomery, but if we have 4, we might be here till late into the night. So, can we please just get this taken care of so we can move on?
Yes, I think so as well. We have a motion ahead of us, correct, in a second? So go ahead,
Call the question.
call the question, please.
Commissioner Aaron's,
Yes.
David Anderson.
Aye.
Mark Nordzy,
No.
Anthony Ventura,
No.
Eric Scott.
Yes.
Marlene Sweeter,
Yes.
Commissioner Commissioner Gibbon.
Yes. Thank you. We got that taken care of.
There we go.
And I do think, yeah, you can look at it and say, well, we haven't gotten much done last week and this week, but I think by doing the groundwork, what we have done, we'll be able to hit the ground running next week, and I think we're on the right track. So with that being said, I guess we'll move on to opportunity for public comment on items that are not on the agenda.
Scott
Yes.
Montgomery Fairview.
Limit it to 3 minutes, please.
I sure will. One question I got, I guess for Toby, will the ordinance and the staff comments be placed on the website under, okay. One comment was made that the PUC granted this commission authority. No,
No, I don't
this
think
commission had authority.
Yeah.
They didn't take it.
What-
I mean, it wasn't the state,
Just to clarify what I said, is that the county commission felt like they
Yes,
didn't have,
that's what I mean,
not
but-
this commission, the county
that's right,
commission.
the county commission. They
Planning
had the
commission
authority.
Felt like they had the authority as
Yeah,
well.
well, they had the authority. They weren't granted. I wish they would've used it. I'm gonna share something with you that might offend some people. It's called carbon dioxide stunning of pigs. Carbon dioxide stunning is used for stunning pigs in many countries. There's been welfare concerns about CO2 because of the pungent gas, which is irritating to the respiratory tract. So when they give this, the pigs violently attempt to escape. When they first inhale this gas, this is not acceptable. We better realize this is gonna happen to people too. When CO2 or other controlled atmosphere methods are used, 20 or more seconds may be required before the pigs have lost posture. From an animal welfare standpoint, the most important part of the process is the induction phase before the pigs fall over and lose ability to stand. The pigs will be unconscious either at the time of loss of posture or 2 to 10 seconds after loss of posture. Convulsions, kicking, and squealing that occur after loss of posture are less of a welfare concern. This better be a welfare concern for humans. Thank you.
Thanks.
Any other?
Sarah Stever from Lennox. What happens to all the documents that get uploaded from the 30 people who've uploaded things? Are those printed out? Are those, how will you guys consume that information?
I guess I'll have to rely on our administrative assistant to answer that.
Yeah, as I'd mentioned before, there's a vetting process. We review what was submitted, and again, if there's any personal information or anything that would create a potential risk for that individual, that's going to be redacted, and then it's posted on the website. So the comments and in the attachments will be posted on the website if they haven't already.
Okay, thank you.
I think the 30 people that are uploading things assume that you guys are going to read everything that they upload. I think that's their purpose. It's for public consumption perhaps also, and should be, but just curious if you all intend to read everything that's been submitted. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, yes.
Aaron Eldridge, 2000 West Derby Place, Sioux Falls. I'm with Summit Carbon Solutions. I know I've seen most of you guys before. Just want to reiterate, we have members that do live in Lincoln County. We're in the state all the time. We would love to be a resource, help answer any questions that we can, design, construction, operations, any part of the project, specifically related to Summit Carbon Solutions. Just would love to be a resource and help out in any way that we can.
Thank you. All right, I guess moving on, executive session, there's any measure that has to be dealt with in executive session as this committee? Seeing none, hearing none, I guess then we are ready for adjournment. So I have a motion to adjourn.
Mr. Chair, before you do that,
Yes, Mark?
I have a question, and I don't know where to ask this. Is there a way that we could ask staff to prepare a summary of these like four ordinances? Toby, when he was up there, he spoke about, just several major bullets. Definition of a pipeline, land use, setbacks, et cetera. Could they pick 5 or 8 bullets and then just line the ordinances up and tell us what the differences are? So when we start our discussion next week, we can quickly see what the differences are, where we may have to have a more in-depth discussion versus, hey, they're all the same, let's just move on.
I know that the October 10th, 2023 defined most of those things. It was carbon dioxide, pipeline and pipeline system, production facility, rural areas. It pretty much went into that, if that was something that you kind of were thinking of.
Yeah, I've
So
read those, and it's kind of just comparing them
Yeah.
so we know what the differences are as we move through our discussion.
So I think what you're asking would be prepared already in the past staff reports, Toby. And did I hear it right? Are they going to go on be uploaded to the website, or is there? Could you get those to the people that want them?
So staff did staff reports on the 2 that were before the planning commission.
Right, the first
So
two.
I'll have staff reports for the February 21 and the June 20th. We can upload that. The October 6th, I'm going to refrain from doing a staff report on
Right.
that yet, because that still will probably go before the planning commission. I'd reserve the time to do it with them, with that part of it. But I could certainly, as a comment, we can put together kind of a list that shows the differences between setbacks and things like that. It's a little bit more complicated than it sounds, though, because they all had different setbacks. Some of Mr. Ventura's ordinances have setbacks from building eligibilities and things like that. So it's not necessarily apples to apples kind of a thing.
Right.
But we'll try to do the best. And like I always tell the planning commission, if there's things that you would like to see more of, we'll start next week, and then we'll progress and just, but just give us feedback of what you want, so, okay?
Mr.
Do
Chair.
municipalities have their own setbacks as well, different from the counties?
Municipalities do not have setbacks. They don't have ordinances outside of their municipalities. So, but there is a setback for municipalities in each of those 4 ordinances, so, okay?
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
In regards to definitions, Mr. Brown, and you, maybe either one of you can answer it, does the PUC and/or statute provide definitions in many of these areas?
So what I would say the closest one would be the October 10th draft. The Federal Register has definitions for it. The PUC, yeah, I'm not aware in state statutes are specific for it, but there is in the Federal Register for carbon dioxide pipelines, yes.
Okay, but the PUC currently is not working with a set of definitions for whatever the the term might be.
Well, there is a state statute for the definition. We'll supply that. We'll get that to you for next week, okay?
Thank you.
Toby, I do have a question for you.
Yep.
If cities ask for joint jurisdiction, how far would that jurisdiction extend from the cities to with the county?
That would be up to the Board of Commissioners, but state statute allows up to 6 miles outside of a
So
municipality.
they can, if they ask for standards with the county, it can be 6 miles out from the
Up
city?
to, yes, correct.
Correct.
Yep.
Thank you.
So Mark, has your question been answered?
Yeah, and thank you to Toby and his staff and Steve as well, who tried to come up with something that we can act on. That's kind of my point is let's ferret it down to those very key issues. We can compare and ask questions and act, so we do move forward. So I think that's my point, and thank you guys for doing that.
Thank you.
And just before we close, I want to reiterate, as I said before, I've yet to receive any agenda items from any of the committees. I want to welcome you, encourage you, if you have an idea, framework for a way we can move this along, please submit that to me. At this point, we have one item for next week that was voted on by this group. But again, individually, if you have ideas to move this along, I welcome you to send me those agenda items and we'll add them in. Just like I said, try and get that to me by the end of day on Thursday, and we'll get it on the agenda so we can move this along. All right, good.
Thank you. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second, Scott.
We have a motion and a second to adjourn. Go ahead and call the roll.
Commissioner Aaron's,
Yes.
David Anderson, Mark Nordzy, Anthony Ventura,
Yes.
Eric Scott,
Yes.
Marlene Sweeter,
Yes.
Commissioner Gibbon.
Yes. Meeting adjourned.